How's it going? Welcome back, my wonderful wise ones, to a fantastic video today because we are taking a look at Starfield in 2025, and it's been quite a long time since I've actually discussed Starfield. And to be honest, it's quite sad what has happened to this game. Now, I know there are people who still enjoy this game, and that's great. There is a community for Starfield, but it just isn't the success story that Bethesda obviously wanted it to be.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer. Every night I feel my leg, my arm, even my fingers.
More people are still playing older Bethesda titles, which is quite insane when this was supposed to be, a big brand new IP, one of the Bethesda's biggest games with brand new technology and 16 times the detail and all of that. And I myself can, attest to this. I'm still playing Fallout 4, and I'm gonna make a massive transformational video on that game very shortly because I've completely transformed it into something quite special. But today we are going to take a look at Starfield because it did recently get an update, and that is the first major update in a long time. And what's more insane, okay, is the fact that this game is now 2 years old, because it feels like it only just came out a few months ago. That just shows you our mortal essence is slowly being drained by Todd Howard. That's how he stays so young. It all makes perfect sense now. The leather jackets, the never aging, the constant detail being uplifted with every release. It all makes sense.
It won't hurt. We just want to drain your living essence. It's here. Close it, slave.
So I'm not going to bore you with a massive 40-minute video like some shill YouTubers, Luke Stevens, are going to talk about and just crap all over this game. I do think Starfield is still a good game. It's just not a great game, and it's not a good Bethesda game. Even though this was supposed to be the most Bethesda game. And in some ways it is, but in all the wrong ways, I would say. Now, I'm not going to apologize that I love Bethesda titles. I absolutely do. I love the older Bethesda games. Skyrim, Oblivion, Fallout, of course, 3 and 4, now that I've transformed it. Before I wasn't so sure about that game. But the reason I love Bethesda is just because their style of gaming is, just completely different. And you can say there are tons of other open world games. Yes, that's true, but none of them have such an immersive feeling to them compared to a Bethesda title. Yes, it's got a lot of jank. Yes, it's, broken many times, and that's kind of funny. The AI is always terrible in Bethesda games, but no other games have, everything interacts to you, the player, with your choices, the physics of the game world, all of that stuff. That's what makes their game special. And I did enjoy some of my time with Starfield, but I'm not going to go back and play it, not for a long time, until a major mod comes out, which I'm going to highlight in this video because that is why you should be interested in Starfield in 2025, and I'm going to showcase that today. But just the game itself, it just fell short of, people's expectations when it first came out. It felt dated. It still feels dated compared to some of their decade-year-old games like Fallout now, with so much loading screens. I don't need to go into the whole drama. You know why Starfield failed to begin with, but there is still a fan base out there. And recently, this new update, what did it actually add? Well, it didn't actually add any new content. The last update was actually really good, I think, because it changed, how you actually engage with the combat. There's lots of difficulty sliders, so you can customize it yourself. This basically is updating the creation engine and stuff like that, and a few bug fixes, making it easier for modders and all that kind of stuff. But I do think Bethesda have kind of moved on from this game, because if you look at the Steam charts, it's quite shocking. So here is the Starfield Steam charts. Now, in the last 24 hours, it's only had 4,000 people play it, which is less than my audience, so that's kind of insane. And at its peak, it was crazy, because of Game Pass and because of all the hype around it. Of course, everyone was excited. The showcase was one of the best Bethesda showcases, I think, because they did such a good job hyping it up, hiding all of the bad aspects of this game, the weak characters, the bad dialogue that just doesn't have much flavor to it. It doesn't tackle any adult themes. That's the problem I have with Starfield. It just feels void of emotion. It feels void of actual real topics. Like it's afraid to get its hands dirty. With Fallout, for example, that IP in general, but also, even how Bethesda tackles it, it has so much more nuance to it. It just feels like white toast. You know what I mean? It just feels so vanilla. But anyway, yeah, it did have a massive peak on release, and then slowly and slowly it just went down and down and down. And yeah, that was when I noticed I kind of fell off as well. Was around, Christmas time. I just kind of started not to care about it that much. I played with some mods around this time because it was starting to pick up then. But then since then, it's just got less and less and less. Some people have picked it back up. But then since, this last year, it's just completely basically flatlined, and now it's only around 4,000 to 5,000 people who are actually playing this game. And like I said, older Bethesda titles are performing better than Starfield, even though they're 10 years old at this point. Now, one reason that you should care about Starfield in 2025 is because of this total conversion mod list that I just want to highlight today. And I will talk more about Starfield as well, but I just want to highlight this more at the beginning of the video so people are aware of its existence. This is a total conversion mod, okay? And if you know anything about me and my channel, I absolutely love modding, okay? I love mods because that's what makes Bethesda games so great, to be honest, is the community. Is the player base. It's, you guys and me, the fans behind, IPs that Bethesda hold now, like Fallout, like the Elder Scrolls that they've always had. But, it's the modding community that makes these games something special in the end. It just takes time. And this, I think, is the biggest and most crazy creation that Starfield, has going for it right now. I was hoping people would add their own planets, own mini stories, deeper RPG mechanics, all that stuff, better writing, but we're not really getting any of that. A lot of it is just creation, kind of paid mods by Bethesda, like being a bounty hunter and stuff like that. But this is what I was hoping for at the release. It's called Star Wars Genesis. And this literally transforms the whole Starfield game into a massive Star Wars RPG. They add planets like Coruscant, like Tatooine, wildlife, all of the different Star Wars aliens, full quest lines, with the rebels and all this kind of stuff, all of these different ships. And I always felt that Star Wars and Starfield go hand in hand so nicely. So this is just pretty insane. So I do hope you enjoy this Starfield 2025 review as I look back at this game, talk about where it's going and the future of Starfield in 2025, and if Starfield is worth playing in 2025. Like I said, one of the main reasons I wanted to make this video is just because the update was so lackluster and so many people were waiting for news on Starfield because it's kind of been put to sleep for 2 years at this point, or over a year since the last major update. It feels like, anyway, it wasn't that long ago, but that was the last major update, and since then, since they dropped the DLC, it's just been radio silence. Now this looks like Star Wars Outlaws, but actually this is Starfield, which is kind of insane. As you can see, they've literally modded in entire planets from Star Wars, all of the races. I played around with this a little bit before, and I think now it's on version 8 point something. And it's only going to get bigger and better. And it's modders like this that we have to support, people who are doing more than Bethesda, honestly, that are adding full, changes to the game, new storylines, all of that stuff. And Starfield does have good bones. It has solid bones. It's just put together by duct tape. That's the problem with Starfield. It's the way it's all integrated. If we can somehow break down those barriers, make the loading times less focus on, system management and more gameplay, that's when Starfield is actually good. It's visually a nice looking game. The ship combat is really good. I really enjoyed that. The exploration can be fun, but it just feels so hollow because of its AI structure of, randomly generated locations, if we have player made locations just like they did with the DLC, that was far better compared to most of Starfield's main content, in my opinion. That's what we need to focus more on, and it's mods like this that are trying something different that I just want to showcase. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe right now. Become a wise one today. Think for yourself. That's what this community is all about. A wise gaming community. Something I know that shouldn't exist, but I'm glad that it does. If you love deep analysis on gaming and looking deeper at video games and different topics just around life in general, I combine philosophy and gaming on this channel to give you something unique. And this channel is all about, people having different perspectives, different opinions, coming together and just sharing our love for deeper analysis on these topics. And with my reviews, I always try to stay as objective as possible, so do bear that in mind. But become a wise one if that sounds good to you. So I'm going to show some of the Genesis gameplay in the background just because I think it, really highlights what Starfield could be in the future. Honestly, the problem I had with Starfield is just the universe wasn't that interesting. The new world that Bethesda built wasn't that interesting. It felt very, like I say, safe and almost family friendly. Not very adult or very gritty or anything like that. I'm not saying all sci-fi needs to be that, but it just needs a little bit more to it. So that's why I think mods like this can really transform the game in the future. It doesn't have to be Star Wars, but just something like that. Honestly, I think Bethesda would be better if they kind of built on an IP instead of creating their own thing, because they kind of just, dropped the ball on that. So sadly, the new Starfield update isn't anything to write home about. It isn't anything that really transformed the game. Sadly, there's still a lack of enemy variation in this game. A lot of the aliens that you come across, once you realize they all follow the exact same AI pattern of being friendly or slightly standoffish or aggressive, they all have the same attacks, pretty much. That's when Starfield starts to lose its fun, and once you've completed some of the faction quest lines. The New Game Plus mode is the New Game Plus mode is interesting in Starfield, but it quickly loses that interest because they could have done so much more of it. And in other words, this game was just so ambitious, and they just bit off more than they could handle, I believe. But Starfield in 2025, is it actually worth playing now? Well, I do think it is a much better time this year because of all of those gameplay tweaks, like I said, that you can have now with changing the difficulty, changing how much damage you take, how much damage you deal, the different effects, like the weather actually being a danger now, when before it was just not a problem. Now it feels much more Star Trek, much better, interesting sci-fi when you're out exploring, because now environmental dangers actually matter. Like I said, they've added quality of life improvements, like, just a simple FOV slider for PC, quicker loading times, and all that good stuff. And the modding scene in 2025 is good, but it sadly is just not what it should be, not compared to Elder Scrolls or anything like Fallout, because the community just aren't as interested in this game, but the die-hard Starfield community are still, modding and adding unique content to this game, so that is a big plus. I also just wanted to add that there were moments in Starfield that I felt like it was reaching for something great, good quality sci-fi, like randomly discovering, like a derelict spaceship, boarding that spaceship, having the zero gravity go off, and then, like stumbling upon a random scenario where you just encounter this floating AI out in space, and then you decide what to do with that, and then you think, okay, I'm going to get into some deep themes and, ideologies and philosophies discussing what exactly is consciousness and what does it mean to be, a finite creature in an infinite universe, and all this kind of crazy deep stuff, okay? But the writing in Starfield just never landed. It never went anywhere. It was the most basic, kind of back and forth dialogue, and that's what really killed Starfield for me, as someone who, loved the RPG aspects in Bethesda games. It just felt like it was all very surface level. It was very, very wide with, you know, all of the different things that you could do, all of the different systems, settlements and all that stuff, but there was never a reason to actually do any of that. And I felt the same thing with just exploring the world and the universe. The characters, they never felt like actual people to me. And I think that was the biggest flaw of Starfield, and many people don't really discuss that. Of course, that is a personal preference, that is a bias of mine. Some people are going to gel with some of the stories and characters. I just felt like it never reached for anything deeper, and it always stuck with, you know, what was safe. And instead of exploring the different ideas and, you know, reasons as to why these factions exist and what they're doing, you know, in this universe, and what that makes you in all of this, you know, if it turns you into a good person or a bad person. I feel like other Bethesda games have always done such a good job with, you know, kind of giving you a moral decision and then, you know, basically you deciding what was right and what was wrong, and sometimes there being a grey in between. But Starfield didn't have any of that. A lot of it just felt like you were playing a massive video game. And that was something I just wanted to highlight in the Starfield 2025 review, because that was one of the main reasons that I am so attached to older Bethesda games. It's the lore, it's the world building, the environmental storytelling. There were just so many things that were missing from this game that made other Bethesda games so good. And, you know, unlike most games, what I feel Bethesda games do so well is it makes you reflect on who you are as a person, as a gamer, someone, you know, interacting with their worlds. But I just felt like I never got any of that with Starfield. Even if the basic gameplay of Starfield is actually fun, moment to moment, like the gunplay, it's, you know, good enough, but again, that kind of felt stale. There wasn't enough, you know, flexibility and movement to make it interesting. It didn't have any interesting system like VATS or, you know, crazy skill abilities like in Cyberpunk. It was very basic in so many aspects, and I think honestly that is why Starfield, not many people care about it now except that core audience. And I'm not saying they're insane. They obviously find something enjoyable about it, like exploration, the ship combat, and I do understand those aspects, but it just wasn't enough to, you know, capture this brand new RPG that Bethesda were going for. So is it worth it in 2025? It is if you never experienced it and you want to give it a try, because it's now better than ever. But I don't think, you know, anything that comes out that Bethesda does is going to save Starfield. One of the main things I love about Starfield in 2025 now is the fact that, you know, there's so many different mods out there, and just removing some limitations that, you know, the base game set makes this game so much more funner. Like taking out some of the essential NPCs, customizing your ship to these massive, you know, giant starships. That's a lot of fun. You know, there are good things in Starfield, like the ship customization that was always good, but now it's only got better with time. And also the DLC that is now added to the game does make it feel like a much more complete package if you're playing fresh in 2025. You know, the exploration doesn't feel so annoying if you kind of try this out on release and then just put it down, because now you do have the vehicle. That does make exploration a lot better. So there are things that make it worth playing in 2025, I would say. But sadly, just overall, I don't think Starfield really capitalized on its hype, capitalized and utilized, you know, the audience that was there to begin with, because they just kind of dropped the ball on Starfield. They kind of moved on to other projects that were, you know, giving Bethesda more money, like Fallout 76 and stuff like that, after the show. And sadly, I just don't like the direction of where Bethesda is going. Like I said, I'm a huge Bethesda fan of their older games, but what they've done with the IP of Fallout and stuff like that, and just the way Bethesda now just focuses heavily on monetization, you know, these creation club things, and content that is just all paid for, the fact that they are kind of letting Elder Scrolls sit for so long, the fact that they haven't done anything new with the Fallout IP, even though it's the biggest it's ever been. Lots of frustrating things about modern day Bethesda, and I understand why people have kind of, you know, just given up on them. But they did make quality games, and I do believe they still have that magic in them. But Starfield, I hope that was a learning lesson. You know, some people will gel with the gameplay if you like a slower paced game where, you know, it's more about exploration and just enjoying the kind of zen nature of, randomly discovering these planets. But sadly, it's only fun when you realize that it's only fun for a while, because eventually you will realize on these planets the same things over and over again will appear. And that's when Starfield just loses its magic. And the only way to really fix that, I think, is to add a bunch of content to this game. But it doesn't look like Bethesda's doing that. So if you're waiting for the perfect time to play this, I would say wait for, massive mod overhauls to come out, like I highlighted. Or if you want to play the base game now with the DLC, it is a good time to jump in with all of the customization you have now. But I just don't think Starfield will ever live up to its potential. So there you go, that is my Starfield 2025 review, an updated look at this game and where it's going in the future. I just wanted to talk about it as I do have an interest, of course, in Bethesda games, and just seeing that they've kind of let this game in the dark is kind of disappointing and sad to me. So let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and I'll be seeing you in the next video. Have a blessed day. Peace out.